Hi guys, I'm checking in. I haven't checked in for a little while, haven't said hello. I've been on a course, been doing lots of exciting things, learning lots of exciting things, and learning something called EFT and matrix reimprinting, which is going to be a really powerful tool for me to use with my clients once I've done some practice sessions with a few people. I'm very excited to be able to help people who might be just experiencing difficult emotions. Anyway, that's not the reason that I am checking in. It's because I was having a conversation with someone earlier about how challenging I find it to be visible, and it's something obviously I've been aware of, it's something I've talked about, something I've shared, but it's not something I've been able to understand in the sense of, like, where does that come from? Why do I suddenly find it so difficult to know who I am and how to how I want to show up, and to put myself in front of people? And I've had a bit of an epiphany, really. The lady that I was talking to, the lovely lady that I was talking to, we were talking about loss, and the loss of people from our lives. And obviously in the last 5 years I've lost both my parents, and not only has that made me reflect on every area of my life and think about where my life's going and what I'm doing, and I guess in a lot of ways it's created a sense of urgency for me to make sure that my life is as meaningful and as on purpose as possible. But I've realised that as an only child you spend a lot of time just with your parents, and my parents shaped a lot of who I was, how I showed up, who I could and couldn't be, and I loved my parents dearly, but there were times when I would show up in a way that was acceptable to them and not necessarily in a way that was truly me. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, we do what we do, we live how we live. It sounds a bit stupid really, but I realised that when my parents died, I didn't know who I was without them. I didn't know who I was without them telling me what was acceptable and what wasn't, and without having their boundaries as my guiding points. And I realise now that that's why I struggle so much to be seen, because actually I'm a bit like a toddler learning who I am and learning about the world to a certain extent. I am having to explore ways of doing things. I'm having to push myself to do things that I would never have done before because I wouldn't have allowed myself to do them before. I'm stepping into who I was always meant to be, and embracing that fully, but at the same time that's a really quite a scary thing, and brings up a whole load of stuff. And I'm realising that that's the thing that's kept me stuck for the last sort of year to 18 months, is the fact that in some ways I'm still figuring out who I am without my parents as my identity, I suppose. And you know, when I say that my parents were like my identity, I don't mean that in a critical way of them. They did their best to help me and to guide me, and they shared their knowledge with me with the best of intentions, and they were doing the best that they could. But some of their beliefs aren't really my beliefs. Some of the beliefs that I have now, that I carry now, I know are not really my beliefs. They are beliefs that I learnt in my childhood, And the course that I've just done talks so much about how much the years between 0 and 6, like what an influence that has on who we are and how we show up in the world. And I am running a lot of programs that tell me that it's really not okay to be seen and to be visible. And so going through an experience where I've lost what I considered to be my identity, you know, my family unit, my family unit disappeared, and suddenly I was kind of an orphan because I'm an only child, and that sounds silly because I'm 35. I'm not a child, but actually grief just doesn't work like that. Like, you still feel like a child. I felt like a child. I still feel like a child that's lost my family unit, and I have lots of loved ones in my life. I'm very, very lucky to have people in my life who care about me and who are there, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the family unit that I knew, that was my safety, that was my comfort, that was my boundaries, that was my morals, that was everything, disappeared. And in the last 5 years, I have been trying to learn who I am. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? What am I here for? Why am I going through these experiences? I believe that the experiences I've had have been for something greater than me. I believe that my experience of loss is really there to help others. Like, it's not insignificant that my parents were young. My dad was 51 and my mum was 53. Okay, they're not the youngest people to die, but it's not insignificant that both of them have died in such a short space of time. It's not insignificant that I'm now of an age where, like, I'm an adult, I'm able to cope, I've got resources, I can process this and I can use this to help other people. You know, I didn't think that this is the direction my life would go in, but my biggest reason for getting up each day is that feeling that I want to help other people. I don't want people to go through the loneliness and the isolation that I felt. I don't want people to go through this same feeling of, who am I? Where do I fit? You know, and I think to a certain extent that is an inevitability with loss, because loss is such a personal thing and it is such a private thing, and we all respond to loss in different ways. But I think that my experiences have been given to me for a reason. I think that the fact that I'm very curious about how the mind works, about learning about myself, about changing myself, and not being afraid to ask questions that, you know, maybe we sometimes shy away from because they're a bit uncomfortable. Like, I think that these are all things I've realised about myself since losing my parents. The qualities that I now see that I have are qualities that I didn't have before, not because they weren't there, but because I never had a reason to use them. I never had a reason to connect with them. I was always in my safe little bubble with my parents protecting me. I never really had to know what it's like to really, really stand on my own 2 feet and figure shit out myself. And that's not to say I wasn't independent and I wasn't an adult and I wasn't living my own life. I've owned my own flat since I was 24. I've, you know, pretty self-sufficient, pretty independent, pretty headstrong, but there were always boundaries. I would always refer back to the parents for, you know, is this okay? Like, get their feedback. If they didn't like something, I would think twice about doing it, and I, generally speaking, probably wouldn't do it unless I wanted to be a rebel, like when I got my nose pierced on a lunch break because my dad told me not to. You know, I had my rebellious streak, but not probably as much as maybe I would have liked. And so, yeah, I think that I've learnt so much about who I am and they're all things I didn't know. And so now I'm finding myself in situations doing things I never would have dreamed I'd be doing, helping people in ways I never dreamed I'd be helping them, and stepping into this new person. And at the same time, I'm like a toddler who's like, well, what is this new world that I'm living in now? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, how do I figure this out? Like, and I think that loss can actually do that, and I don't necessarily think that always has to be a terrible thing. I think that there is a sensitivity that's required with loss. I think it's really important to be sensitive to the loss that you've experienced and to allow yourself the space and the room to grieve and to feel all of the emotions. But at the same time, I believe that the only way that you can get up in the morning and keep going is to have hope, and is to keep dreaming and learning and growing, and to look for the positives. If you cannot find any positives, you won't want to get up. So in my process of looking for the positives, in my process of trying to learn about myself, understand myself, grow, get stronger, be more courageous, be braver, in all of those things, I'm learning about myself in ways that I never knew was possible before. And so now, like with the self-doubt thing, I'm experiencing self-doubt because I'm doing things that I never would have done before. So, I think we see sometimes self-doubt and stuff as like a negative thing, and it can be negative if you allow it to stop you from doing the things that you want it to do. If you allow it to stop you from actually living your life fully, then yeah, self-doubt can be a negative thing. But I think at the same time, self-doubt can be a really positive thing, because actually when you experience self-doubt, when you experience that kind of that feeling of like not knowing how things are going to work out, and it's a bit exciting but it's a bit scary, generally that means you're like about to do something that's really challenging, that's outside of your comfort zone. And I have found in my experience that when I've done things that have been massively out of my comfort zone, like travelling for 9 months around Southeast Asia on my own, I didn't think I could do stuff like that. I didn't think I was brave enough to do stuff like that. I didn't think, but I did it. I lived to do it. I've done so many wonderful things when I've pushed outside of my comfort zone, and when I've ignored the self-doubt, and when I've done things anyway. So yeah, I just wanted to share that because it came up in this conversation, and because of my inquisitive mind and the fact that my mind always wants to understand everything, I finally kind of feel like I've got a little bit of a different perspective, and I'm less critical of the self-doubt, and I'm less critical of the fear that I have of being vulnerable, and the fear that I have of being visible. Because now I realise why it's a fear. I realise it's because it's a new thing for me, and so now I can work on trying to actually just build a better relationship with it. So anyway, that's me sharing again. I know I haven't been on for a little while, so I'm going to keep sharing because I am enjoying sharing. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and subscribe to my page, like my business page, Live Your Best Life, and I'll be checking in again tomorrow. So have a lovely evening.